Hey, what's up? Welcome to Thursday, guys. Welcome to Where All the Ladies At. This is the episode where I talk about a woman in history. And this month we are focusing on Black History Month because it is vitally important that we tell the stories of these people. I am a feminist, and this podcast is focused on women. So know that the people we're going to cover are all going to be powerful, badass ladies, okay? And that includes the one we're covering today. It also includes the one from last week. We covered Sister Rosetta Tharpe. I highly suggest you go back and check it out. Like I said, this is Where All the Ladies At. Basically, it's where I take a deep dive into history, legend, and myth and try to figure out where all the fuck all the women went. Because for half of the population, only a handful of us made it into the history books, and that seems fishy. I think it could have something to do with a little patriarchy. I tried all as hard as I could for the past year not to get really political and not to really throw my thoughts and my feelings into the mix. But you know what? I can't do that anymore. It's not possible. With the way the world is going and the things that are happening, I have to speak and I have to say the feelings and I have to be who I am. So if that's something you're not into, I completely understand. You have a right to your thoughts. I am someone who thinks that no matter the color of your skin, you deserve all human rights. I believe you should be able to love who you want to love. You should be able to be who you are, whether no matter what. I also think you should be able to worship who you want to worship. I also think you have freedom of speech and autonomy of your own body. And if that's something you're not into, I completely understand. That's on you. That's your decision. You have the right. But I have the right to be who I am as well. So that means that I am going to celebrate Black History Month because, as I said in my last one, Black history is American history. And this is specifically geared at those from the U.S. All across the globe, I'm hoping that I have people listening all over the world. But for those that are in the U.S., Black history is American history. It's that simple. We're a melting pot, and therefore our history is a melting pot. Everybody, every American deserves to have their history told. And that includes Black history, whether you like it or not. So, this month I'm celebrating Black History Month. Next month I'm going to be celebrating Women's History Month, and I think it's May. I'm going to be celebrating Pacific Islander and Asian American History Month. I'm going to celebrate Pride Month. Yeah. Because these stories are important and they deserve to be heard. And that's that. Like I said, today we are talking about a woman in history. Before we jump into there, if you want to reach out to me, there's ways to do that in the description box. There's also ways to support the podcast. At the very least, if you would like, comment, share, follow, do all that good stuff. Let's get it out there so that more people are hearing these amazing stories. These stories are so important. Not just for Black people, not just for women, but for everybody. Because those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it, one, and two, are if half of our history is erased, we don't know our history. And these women and these events and these amazing things play a part in history. Now, this month I'm focused on Black History Month. I don't always focus only on American-centric things. Women in history deserve to have their kudos. They deserve their time in the light. And if you believe that, then this is a great podcast for you. By the way, I'm Kim. I'm a history nerd. I'm a writer. I'm a passionate feminist. I am part of the LGBTQIA community. Yeah. And I'm not a Christian. That's right. I have a bunch of those box ticks that a bunch of people hate, and I don't care. I am who I am. If you don't like it, that's cool. You don't have to be here. But I can't I can't sugarcoat or I can't anymore. So there's that. If you want more information on these people that I'm covering or anything else, check out my Medium publication. Also, if you're into magical, mystical, spiritual kind of stuff, everything from tarot to crystals to ley lines, all that stuff, I also do another podcast called Our Mystic Road Trip. You might be interested in that. Check it out. I'm a little less ranty over there, but probably because I'm not talking about history. I'm super passionate about history, guys. Things are happening now that are directly out of a playbook. Yeah. So I watched this one tarot reader, Sarah Breedlove. If you like tarot, go check her out. She is amazing. But she keeps saying this one thing, and I absolutely love it. So I'm going to give her credit for it because... And if you are into tarot and you want someone who like just tells you how it is and is not like stuffy and is kind of, you know, she says it herself, she's weird and I like it. She keeps saying we had an open book test and we're failing. And I think that's one of the best ways I've heard of it described, right? We have a book that tells us things that have happened, and yet we're failing to see that they're repeating themselves. That's sad. Anyways, let's talk about something much more exciting. Let's talk about Madam C.J. Walker. Okay, so Madam C.J. Walker is a trailblazer. You may have heard the name, or you may not have. Honestly, like I had kind of heard the name a little bit before I started doing research. But I'm a history nerd, right? I think a lot of people who just are just kind of casual history people, or maybe not really familiar with Black history, may not know the name. So she's like she is a true icon, right? We're going to take a look. But as usual, what we're going to do is I really feel that you have to understand the environment these women were raised in and the challenges they had to go up against to really understand and appreciate their stories. So let's start. Stage 1800s, early 1900s, right? She was born in, let me make sure I don't remember the exact date. I did all these notes. Did I have right? Not that. I have to have written it down. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes, guys. Yes, okay, there we go. I have like a huge list of notes. There's so much stuff to talk about with her. She was born in 1867. So, for those of you that maybe are not familiar with American history, 1867 was 2 years after the end of the Civil War. The Civil War ended in 1865, and it was supposed to mark a new chapter in the U.S., right? Slavery had been abolished, and all that kind of stuff. The South, though, was still kind of in turmoil, right? The Reconstruction era was underway, and that was aimed at rebuilding the South and integrating the formerly enslaved people that were now free citizens, or freer would be the term that I would say. The progress was slow, very slow in the South, and very uneven. The government's efforts to protect African American rights were met with a lot of resistance, in the South in particular. Here's the thing, guys. When we talk about the Civil War, we talk about the South a lot because they were the main culprit. But there was still some racism and things up north. It just wasn't as prevalent. And in particular, it didn't always just focus on Black people. But we'll go into that at another time. And I am no way giving the South a pass, because the way that they handled things was not acceptable, right? Because segregation was still there. It became codified, though, because there was Jim Crow laws. And basically the Jim Crow laws segregated public spaces and facilities, and that kept everybody separate, right? There were water fountains for black people and water fountains for white. Black people couldn't walk on one side of the street. There were cafes that were solely white, or there were maybe there was cafes, but then there'd be a section that's where the black people could sit. So even though they were free, they weren't really free, and violence started erupting. In many areas, racial prejudice was deep. It was so deep, and I think honestly, I don't know how controversial this statement's going to be, but I think after the Civil War, in some ways it got worse, right? I don't know if that's the right way to say it. It just felt like there was a lot more tension than there was previously, and white supremacy started to grow exponentially. This is where the KKK came in. This is where lynchings started to happen on a more frequent basis. Not that they didn't happen before, because they did, but it's self-violent, and it became systematic, right? I taught a class where we read How High the Moon by Karen Parsons, and in the U.S. I don't know if that book would actually be okay for the age bracket I was teaching, but I live in the country of Georgia, and so they're a little bit less restrictive, and there is a scene where there's a lynching, and to hear the young kids talk about it and really ask why and not understand why, number one, is kind of refreshing, because kids don't know. And here, if I'm honest, there's not a lot of that. It's a post-Soviet country, and so there wasn't a lot of black people, African people around, but they don't understand, and it's so refreshing to see, right? Because of the rise in white supremacy and the rise in violence and the rise in more marginalization and more everything, there was a lot of black Americans that began to really push back, demand more rights. But unfortunately, especially in the South, the odds were stacked against them at the time. It wasn't the fight that they had to gain equality wasn't easy. The Emancipation Proclamation had freed them, but it didn't change the mindset of the people that had them enslaved, right? And most of those held power. Many white Americans were determined to maintain this racial hierarchy that said whites were superior to blacks, right? Black men got the right to vote with the 15th Amendment in 1870. Black women, along with all the rest of the women, were just shit out of luck. They had to wait several decades longer to get their right to vote. African Americans fought for basic civil rights, and every small, it was every 2 or 3 steps forward they made, they got pushed back to. It just was a constant uphill battle. And then, the women in general, not just black women, but all women, but black women had it way worse. They were facing at the time a lot of challenges as well. Late 1800s, early 1900s, it wasn't easy, Women were pushing for rights and recognition, but traditional roles were still what people focused on, right? Women didn't have the right to vote until the 19th Amendment in 1920. Owning property in their own name was a luxury that many didn't have. A typical role for a woman was centered around the home, so raising children, managing household, playing the supportive role in the lives of their husbands. It wasn't built for women to grab anything they wanted. Now, it was just women. Black women, they not only had to navigate that gender restriction, but they had to navigate systematic racism, which, by the way, as a side note, is still there. Systematic racism still exists. And that systematic racism would make it very, very hard for them to climb any type of social or economic ladder at all. Opportunities for Black women were few and far between. If they did have a job, they were low paying, and really didn't have a lot of room for advancement. That could be a maid in someone's home, picking cotton, all that kind of stuff. And to make matters worse, Black women were constantly told by society that their beauty and worth didn't matter. Can you imagine every day being told that your beauty and worth didn't matter? How exhausting and how demeaning and how hard that had to be. Just, I can't even. In this oppressive environment, there were few examples of women who broke through limitations. And one of those was Madam C.J. Walker. You know, she didn't want to sit on the sidelines while society told her she was less than. She became her own hero. She created her own opportunity. She fought for her place in the world. And ultimately, she did make a huge change. She made a lot of difference. We're going to take a look at a couple other things. What was going on? We kind of already did that. Let me look at my notes. We did that a little bit here too. So let's get into Madam C.J. So you kind of see the world that she was born into. Yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't easy for anyone, and especially not easy for Black women. Madam C.J. Walker was actually born Sarah Breedlove on December 23rd, 1867. So she's a good old Capricorn. She was born on a cotton plantation, which, by the way, I know if you're not into astrology, that doesn't make sense. But no, after you hear her story, if you are into astrology, you'll know she is like a Capricorn. She was born on a cotton plantation in Delta, Louisiana. Her parents, Owen and Minerva, were former slaves, and Sarah was the first in her family to be born free. The challenges she faced began very early in life, though. Her parents died when she was just 7 years old, and so she was an orphan. And her childhood then became filled with hardship. But you know what? She was very resilient. At the age of 14, I'm going to repeat. At the age of 14, Sarah married Moses McWilliams. The couple had a daughter, Lelia. I think that's how you say her name. But Sarah was widowed just a few years later when Moses passed away. So she was a single mother at the age of 20. And her daughter would have been like 6, something like that. She was young, she was poor, she was a widow, she was Black, and she lived in the South. These are all boxes you would not want checked off at this time. And she was forced to find a way to support herself and her daughter, you know. But she was determined. So she moved to St. Louis, and she found work as a laundress. This job was pretty grueling, and it didn't pay a lot. But it was all she could do to make the ends meet. So she did what she needed to do. And the next few years kind of were just hard work and struggle over and over again. But during this time, things started to take unexpected turn. In her early 30s, Sarah began to experience hair loss and scalp issues. And at the time, there were really no products designed for specific hair care needs, especially when it comes to African American women. And there were few solutions available to her. So her hair was thinning, and she became frustrated with the lack of options. So rather than sit there and just let her hair fall out, she kind of decided to take matters into her own hands. She began really kind of experimenting with homemade remedies. And she created a variety of hair care treatments using natural ingredients. This was the beginning of what would eventually become her signature Walker method. And this was a unique system of hair care treatments specifically designed for Black women. Sarah's method included a combination of products to clean, condition, and strengthen the hair. She refined her formula over time, incorporating her own experiences and learning from others in the Black community who had similar hair challenges. Her treatments not only helped her with hair loss, but they also became popular with other women facing the same issues. Word of her products began to spread very quickly, right? And Sarah began to realize she had an opportunity to do more than just solve her own problems. She could create a business that empowered other women. So she took her breakthrough and she transformed it into a thriving business. She moved to Denver and changed her name to Madam C.J. Walker. And this was kind of a decision that really talked about, like, this was just a new identity for her. She wanted to start fresh, right? So the best way to do that was come up with a new name. You know, her company, the Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company, sold her hair care products, but she didn't just stop there. She built an entire business empire around them. So Madam C.J. Walker's success was not just about selling products, it was about giving other women the opportunity to take control of their lives and earn their own money. So she recruited a network of women to sell her products door to door, creating jobs and offering them financial independence. So kind of like Avon, right? It's very similar to that system. These women, many of whom were struggling with similar economic and social barriers, found new purpose, right? That's a Walker sales force. I would think that because of the time period, I'm betting that, it's just my thought, is that the people that created Avon maybe stole this idea or saw this and copied this method from Madam C.J. Walker. So there's that. But while her vision went well beyond just selling hair care products, right? She understood that her business could be a platform for social change and empowerment. She was dedicated to uplifting her fellow African Americans, right? And ensuring that Black women had a chance to prosper. So she was one of the first to emphasize the importance of Black women supporting one another. And she used her platform to fund charitable causes, including scholarships for young women of color and donations to Black churches and organizations. She even became an advocate for racial and civil rights, using her wealth influence to speak out against injustice. By the time she was in her 40s, Madam C.J. Walker had become one of the wealthiest and most influential women in America. And not just, notice I didn't say Black women, I meant all women. She was one of the most wealthy women in the U.S. She was a self-made millionaire, and that was unheard of at the time, especially for a Black woman. Her achievements were groundbreaking. She had done so by creating opportunities for others. It wasn't she was doing the things for herself. She created opportunities for her community. Amazing. And she challenged the limits of society, right? She didn't just change the beauty industry. She changed the narrative around what women, particularly Black women, could achieve. Her success story was about perseverance. It was about innovation, and it was about empowerment. She was determined, and she used ingenuity, and she built a business in a time where it was just unheard of. And that legacy stands. It has inspired generations of women. She is an inspiration to not just Black women. Should be all women. She's just an inspiration to everybody. She came from nothing, and she took something that was happening to her and used it to build an empire, but not just for herself, for communities and her people. That's awesome. That's awesome. That's all I can say. Madam C.J. Walker impacted America and the world. You know, she was not just an entrepreneur. She was a revolutionary. You know, at a time when beauty products for African women were not existent or didn't really do what they were supposed to do. She created and celebrated the uniqueness of Black hair, and that's awesome. Her line of hair care treatments helped redefine beauty standards and allowed women to embrace their natural hair with pride, which I think is amazing. Just absolutely amazing. Her contribution to beauty standards went beyond just hair care, though. She helped to challenge the dominant, I'm gonna read this word for word from my script, the dominant Eurocentric ideals of beauty, and opened the door for a more inclusive definition of beauty. She empowered women to take care and nurture their hair, and this was a powerful way of self-affirmation. You know, there was systematic oppression and exclusion for Black women, not just from white and Black, but from women too. Like, it was, you know, it was just as bad. White women weren't hanging out with Black women either, even though they were both in a bad situation. She showed beauty wasn't one size fits all, and was just as diverse as the people who were alive. She was also a dedicated philanthropist. She used her wealth to support things that were close to her heart, you know. She was a resource to benefit African American communities and civil rights. She donated generously to the NAACP, and she was a big supporter of the Black YMCA. She established scholarships for young African American women. All of these things. She believed in the power of education, and she used her money in the way it should be. All of her charitable contributions were driven by the belief that African American women had unlimited potential, but also women. She didn't just support African Americans, but women too. She was a passionate advocate for rights of women. You know, she shattered the glass ceiling. I mean, I don't know about shattered. If I'm honest with you, the glass ceiling is still there, but there's a lot of cracks. There's a lot of cracks. Someday it'll be completely gone. She created a platform where women could not only succeed but thrive. She built a business model that allowed women to work independent sales agents. You know, her influence extended beyond her lifetime. Her legacy has inspired generations of women to pursue their own dreams. You know, and that's amazing. Today, Madam C.J. Walker is kind of remembered not only as one of the first African American women to become a self-made millionaire, but she was a trailblazer who changed conversations around beauty and race and women's rights. She laid the groundwork for future generations to continue to fight. She passed away in 1919, but her legacy is still there, and she's still an inspiration to a lot of people. You know, she's pretty awesome. Trailblazer is, I don't even know if trailblazer is a big enough word for her. I'm tearing up. It's just, you know, hold on. It's sad that these stories aren't told in history. You know, even in a time where we thought we were becoming a little bit more, I'll use the term woke, these stories still weren't being told in history. You know, I think in history, when I was going to school and we did Black History Month, I think the only woman that we really learned about was Harriet Tubman. That's it. And there's other Black women that did things, right? Ida B. Wells, Josephine Baker, Madam C.J. Walker. You know, there's tons of other Black women that did shit. You know, I just watched, by the way, because we're doing Black History Month and we're talking about women, I highly suggest, if you have not gone on to Netflix and watched the 668, hold on, let me look and see. I want to make sure I get this name right. 668 Netflix. I think this is what it is. Hold on, I want to make sure I say it. What's this? The 6888. That's what it is. If you haven't seen that movie, go watch it. It's amazing. I had no idea about these women, and now that I do, I think they deserve more than they have gotten, more acknowledgement than they've gotten, because they did something super important. And it has nothing to do with Madam C.J. Walker, but I really wanted to make sure because I just thought of that. It's a great movie. Be prepared to cry, but check it out. It's called The 6888. It's about a World War II African American women's corps that goes and does some amazing things and is given this task that they think they can't handle, and they wind up knocking it out of the ballpark. They are heroes that haven't gotten their time in the spotlight. So check it out. By the way, guys, that's it for Madam C.J. Walker. So if you're interested, go check out some things about her. She is definitely something to keep. There's so much more to her story. I just kind of browsed over the top. As always, I try to keep it between 30 and 40 minutes. So, because I know you guys have a lot going on. But I do think it's important for her to get her time in the spotlight. And I do think if you're interested, go check her out because there's so much more. That is it for this week, guys. Make sure you join me next week to continue celebrating Black History Month because, once again, no matter what anybody says, it's Black History Month. Black history is American history. Next week, we are covering another African goddess. I can't remember which one it is. It's either Chiraxi or Gabadu. I think that's how you pronounce it. My cat just kicked me. And then next week, we are diving into Josephine Baker. So I'm super stoked by that. I know a lot of people know a lot about her, but there's so much more to this lady than I even knew. So I look forward to continuing my celebration of Black History Month. So if that's something you guys are in, make sure to check out next month. If you want to reach out to me, there are ways to do that through my social media and even email if you like to rock it old school. There is also a link to support the podcast financially through my Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon. If you can't do that, and I understand that right now, if you would just like share, follow, review, do all that kind of good stuff, you can watch me here on YouTube or listen to me here on Spotify, whatever you would like. And there is also a link to the Medium publication that goes with this podcast, as well as a link to my other podcast called Our Mystic Road Trip. If that's something you're into, we talk about tarot, crystals, herbs, and all kinds of good stuff like that. That is it for this week, guys. As always, please speak up. Remember that Black history is American history. We are a melting pot, and therefore our history is a melting pot as well. And that is specifically geared towards anybody in the U.S. that's watching this or listening to this. Everybody else in the world, thank you for joining, and I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about this amazing Black woman, Madam C.J. Walker. Until next week, guys, stay curious, and I'll see ya.